Beds, many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome to Anti-Tyranny News Radio here on UCY.tv. Thank you for joining me this evening. We will be diving into news here in a minute, including criminal investigation requested in Hillary Clinton's use of personal email. We'll be getting into that and a lot of other topics. And the first thing I want to start off with is the Ron Paul Liberty Report. With special guest Jeff Dice on the future of liberty. And, this is something that people ask a lot, where is this future headed? And I think it depends on how the social fabric is brought up, and that liberty-minded people learn how to spread the message of what liberty and freedom truly mean and acting on it and living your life to those same morals and standards. And we know there's some people that call themselves a libertarian, which they are, but they are who they claim to be. They're not exactly the nicest people. And it does set example of, just because they might offend you does not give you a right to bridge their rights. And that's something that I think a lot of society has lost. But I also think it's coming back in the movement towards freedom and liberty that many have taken, definitely since the Ron Paul Revolution. And the philosophy has gotten a lot deeper with many, and people really have gone more towards, what is the roots of freedom, and, what's the basis for it. And I think with that growth, and then, these people, you have children, and you instill that into them. And I think that we do have a future. Of course, we will have the establishment trying to prevent that. And I think that's where, there is a major battle for your mind and battle for your will to fight back. And, people looked at Ron Paul as a chance to fight back. Whether he did any major change, he could help prevent more of that change towards more tyranny, and also to send a message. And I think that's what that was about. Now, we have to look ahead and look at the future of liberty. And one thing, to liberate yourself, you have to liberate your mind. You have to really open up to the idea of freedom. And I think liberty cannot be achieved from government. You can't ask government to give you freedom. Liberty has to happen within yourself, and that brings you to understand and live free. So I want to go ahead and dive into this Ron Paul Liberty Report, the future on liberty, with special guest Jeff Dice.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. With me today is Daniel McAdams, who's the Executive Director of the Institute for Peace and Prosperity. Good to see you, Daniel.
Hello, sir. Good to be with you.
Good. We have a special guest today.
Yeah, we do.
And I think you've met him once before, back in the old congressional days. We have with us today the president of the Mises Institute, Jeff Dice, and we're going to have a little visit here on what's going on in the world and in the area of economic training and education. So this is a wonderful chance to visit with Jeff. He was the chief of staff for quite a few years, but he was also in other various jobs like chief of the taxes, that is, the chief who was going to get help and get rid of the taxes, as well as press and other things. But in these last year or so, he's been president of the Mises Institute. So, Jeff, it's great to have you with us today.
Thanks, Dr. Paul. Good to hear from you, and good to talk to Daniel.
Well, wonderful. You know, I want to start off with one of the items in the news. As we speak, of course, every other day it had been solved, and that's the Greek economic crisis. One thing for sure is the people who have been managing this crisis, who created the crisis, and who have messed up all of Europe, were not Austrian economists. And there may be a couple over there, but they don't practice it any more than we practice it here. But Greece is really messed up. The other day, a friend of Liberty, Nigel Farage, who's a member of the European Parliament, did a little clip on there. Did you happen to see that, his little 4-minute dissertation of what the problem was?
I did indeed, and I always enjoy watching the other members of the European Parliament squirm while he's speaking.
Right. So I guess what I'd like to get from you is where you think they should go now, because, you know, we can talk about how it messed up, and it took a long time, and there's always a little bit of pain, and I think Farage actually admitted there'd be a little bit of pain with this, and he was more optimistic than me. I usually say, if you do what's right, in a year you'll be all back on your feet again. He said something like 4 months. But tell us a little bit about what kind of policy changes have to be changed, and take into consideration the politics of it all, and how to get a consensus and an understanding by the people on what one would be doing would be beneficial.
Well, I think Mr. Tsipras might not be long for his job. The problem is he was bluffing with the ECB and with his European paymasters without much of a trump card behind him. He really should have been working on an alternate currency for Greece, something that he could have fallen back on if, in fact, an exit from the euro was his final bluff. But he didn't do that. He really could have taken a lesson from Iceland and looked at their crisis, where they basically told their creditors, who were, among others, German bankers, that they were going to take a haircut, pure and simple, and that when a default comes, there's a process known as bankruptcy generally, whereby lenders take a haircut. And that's the manner by which the bad debt is resolved and taken care of. And these problems don't just linger and go on and on and on and become saddled onto future generations. So I fear what Mr. Tsipras is trying to negotiate here in this 11th hour is something that's just going to perpetuate the problem, kick the can down the road. I mean, Dr. Paul, they need 25 billion euro just to keep their banks, just to reopen their banks and have some operating cash for what will almost certainly be a bank run. They need 7 billion euro just to meet their next payment commitment to the ECB, to not be in default to the ECB like they are in default to the IMF. So these Band-Aid measures, it harkens back to our own crash of 2008. If we had just suffered the pain, a year or two of real pain, and let the bad debt liquidate itself, we would have been able to start to build from a real foundation some sort of economy. But I'm afraid the term Greek economist is now much like a French economist, or apparently a German economist. It's smoke and mirrors, and it's so disheartening to see for the Greek people, who are not wholly blameless, but at least partially blameless in this terrible drama.
Right.
Jeff, you make a great point about debt. What I found so fascinating about this, the idea that a country so badly in debt, such as Greece, I think they have $300 billion and some change. Now with this wonderful new bailout deal, it's going to save them by adding $200 billion more debt. That's like when you max out a credit card and get another one and max that one out. Does it make any sense to you?
No, it's terrible. And the real victims here are the Greek people. They're not wholly blameless, but they're certainly partially blameless. And it all harkens back to our own crisis of 2008, where we thought, well, we can kick the can down the road. And instead of just letting the bad debt work itself out and letting the bankruptcy process occur for firms like B of A and Countrywide and AIG, we propped them up, we bailed them out, we got more debt, we restructured. And as a result, 5 or 6 years later now, we find ourselves mired in the same problems we failed to fix. And it just seems as though if the Greek people were given an opportunity to go to their creditors, much like Iceland did, and say, you're going to take a haircut and that's it, and we're starting over, this debt cannot be repaid, we can't solve it by borrowing more, they would actually have an opportunity to build something new, to build a real economy based on some sort of productivity, as opposed to just more debt and more short-term relief. But what's so interesting to me about all this is how it just proves that the centralizers were wrong. The centralizers were the ones telling us that the UN and the IMF and the EU will eliminate hostility between countries in Europe. Instead, we find that the EU is inflaming the old tensions from World War I and World War II between Greeks and Germans. Instead of creating prosperity, we find that the ECB has created huge moral hazards that lead to more of this kind of debt. And instead of creating just a trade zone, we've seen that there really is a real loss of sovereignty for the Greek people. They're now being dictated to by Brussels and Frankfurt, and their own parliament, which is supposed to be the parliament of an independent sovereign country, is now forced to meet tomorrow and accept terms from the EU. So the centralizers have always been wrong. And what the great problem with centralization is what could be small contained problems like we saw in Iceland become larger systemic problems that affect larger parts of the global economy.
As bad as it is in Greece, I think the real fear for many people is the contagion. What will happen after this, and when will the European Union and the Euro go, which is all a possibility at any time. And sometimes there are distractions, and people think that if they talk about something else, people won't worry. But there's more news now about our debt. Even though nobody's panicking, I don't think too many people are taking money out of our bank. So it's a while off, but surely could come. But I saw a statement by our friend Mark Faber, who is an Austrian economist and also a very famous investor. He was saying the really big issue, and he was into economics, as bad as it is in Europe and with Greece, he said the really big one is the turn down in China, mainly because they buy 40% of all the commodities. He thinks the economy is much weaker than they admit to. They claim they're really slipping toward a bad time because they're only having 7% growth. But he says in reality it's much lower, and that's going to have ramifications. So I think that's the big picture. This is a world dollar standard. It's been going on since 1971, and the bubble is huge. It's a dollar bubble, and all this malinvestment and debt. And I think the day is coming where this debt will have to be unwound, and just debt piled on debt will not solve our problem.
Well, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And what we're going to find out is what happens when a world's reserve currency fails. We've had examples of regional or national currencies failing. We had Weimar Germany. Of course, more recently, we had Argentina. But the scope of the dollar's status since the 70s as king dollar of the world, there's no historical precedent for this. And we're really in uncharted territory. That's why nobody can say for certain whether the result will be a hyperinflationary spiral or whether it will actually be a deflationary depression. But we know it doesn't end well, and we know at some point our creditors, especially Asian central banks and Asian exporters are going to get very tired of our profligacy here at home and are going to start to look for alternatives to the dollar.
You know, I want to work this into the purpose and the function of the Mises Institute, because it has been dealing with this for a very long time. And they have an answer. You know, there are several so-called libertarian groups and free market people that hardly ever deal in monetary policy. There are some others, but a principal libertarian economic education group that deals with the monetary policy and the business cycle has to be the Mises Institute. And that, I think, is where we have to look for the answers. Now, you've been there at the Mises Institute, I guess, around a year or so, but you've known about it for a long time. And of course, Lou Rockwell knows very much about this. But how do you see the progress? Are you still getting a lot of young people to come? And can we give the people a little bit of hope about this? Mises says you have to change people's mind. You have to have people sit down and study theory, but you still have to make that theory palatable to the common man so that they accept it in their own best interest. So how do you think the Mises is doing at this particular moment?
Well, I think there's huge interest in the Austrian school now, and in part that's due to the crash of 2008 and the recognition by millions of people around the world that central banks weren't working. In part that's due to your two presidential campaigns where you brought monetary issue from the back burner of being this boring, wonkish thing for Washington think tanks into something that affects everyday people. So I think that was a tremendous coup on your part. And, you know, issues like what we see happening in Greece right now, all of these things are creating an unrest among people. And they know that something's wrong, but maybe they don't know exactly what's wrong. They know on some level that we can't print or just create money and become prosperous from it, but they don't exactly understand the full mechanics of how central banks work and how they devalue currency. So I think in a way, we're in a great spot. We're sort of like when only 10% of the population had mobile phones. You know, the sky's the limit. Still a very small fraction of the public has much knowledge about monetary policy. And really, to me, central banking is the great evil of our time. It made the horrific wars of the 20th century possible. It makes profligacy in governments around the world possible. It creates huge distortions and misallocations and malinvestment in the global economy. So, you know, it doesn't, you know, people want to talk about gay marriage or they want to talk about whatever social issues are on the front burner. But to me, central banking is the issue of our day, and it's the most important issue of the 21st century.
Well, I want to tell viewers to pay a lot of attention. If you have not visited the Mises Institute website, you should. If you're looking for books, go there. You can get all varieties of books. The small little book like The Law or The Human Action that Mises wrote, but then Murray Rothbard's book. And the Mises Institute has carried on a tradition that I believe in many ways Leonard Read started, and he was influenced, I was influenced by him, and that was small groups in education, and I know the Mises Institute does this. So anybody who wants to learn something can. They can get the literature. This was not available in the 1950s and the 1960s. It was a struggle. So right now, it's a lot easier. Leonard Read achieved it when he didn't have these tools. So right now, we need to use these tools. And Jeff, I am so delighted with what you've been doing at the Mises Institute. So you keep up the good work, because the answers will be found in good ideas. The real fault will come from bad ideas. It's a world of contest between ideas, and it makes all the difference in the world. Jeff, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you, gentlemen.
And I want to thank all our viewers today, and please return to the Liberty Report soon.
Okay, Ron Paul Liberty Report. You can find it on YouTube, Ron Paul Liberty Report. And that was the Future of Liberty with special guest Jeff Deist. Now, you know, and one thing he brought up in that was, you know, not only what's going on with Greece, but our Asian central bankers. Well, he's also been warning in previous Liberty reports that I played here um, about China market. Well, who do you think those Asian central banks are? Oh yeah, China plays an extremely big part in that. And he talked about eventually they're going to seek alternative currency. Well, that's something that I've been warning you about. Russia and China are already working together to create a alternative currency. And guess what? We will see one of the closest things other than the euro to a world currency, because this is beyond the euro when you look at the American dollar in the world market and it being the petrodollar. Um, so, in that sense, this will literally be the first world currency to take a nosedive, and this is something unprecedented. And we're going to see the effects of that. And I think it's going to hit us the hardest. We're the ones that tend to live in a larger number of people tend to get to live a freer and maybe even a more comfortable lifestyle than many other countries. And people are like, what about, England? Um, I don't know if you've noticed, but sometimes a lot of those neighborhoods over there tend to look, if you're outside of the urban area, when you're kind of more the, I guess you would call it suburban, it looks worse than a lot of our housing additions here in America. At least the housing additions, the fronts look different. One might be a 1-story, another one might be a 2-story. The backs might look all the same, kind of boxy, just big box with a different front facing, but it looks different. They have houses that literally look all the same color, same brick, all the way down the road. Now it's not, unheard of that, you got the other people that are more rural that live maybe a little bit for your lifestyle, but I think Americans have lived a pretty comfortable lifestyle, a lot of amenities that are just really second nature to us, and things that we might take for granted. Now, we're not, by far the only country that lives comfortable anymore, but I think we've had it comfortable for a long period of time, and I think there are a lot of Americans out there that are not ready. But I also think, through Ron Paul's campaigns and the message that's gotten out there, and then the further discussion and the deeper philosophy into what freedom is and what liberty is, and looking for the truth, and kind of uncovering this matrix that you feel you're a part of, and you're kind of looking around in amazement, and then you just keep going further down the rabbit hole and further into deepen your philosophy. And I think there's a lot of people out there that's done that. And I know that there are basically communities that have come together out of that. And I'm not talking just, things like free state. I'm just talking in general that there are a lot of people out there that have got to know each other. And there's a network of freedom-minded, like people from different cultures, from different religions, from different races, from different, cultures altogether. And I think, no matter what, something good can come out of where we are now. And the more that the system negatively affects more people, it's more of a reason for you to get out there and spread the message. And it will, the more people it affects, the more they have to realize what they're caught in. You know, there's a lot of people out there, you know, I don't have a problem with cops, I don't have a problem with this, and then they get pulled over and harassed and, you know, their car searched and, you know, treated like dirt. And they never had an interaction like that. And they thought, you know, they would never have an interaction like that. Why do these people get, you know, mad? Well, it's kind of one of those things. It's a natural reaction. You either get mad or you kind of get, you know, with your head down, puppy dog, you know, just got beat. You know, the human reaction is, you know, anger in ways is similar to sadness. And in people, how they react, you know, even when they get sad, they might act out in anger. Even if, you know, they're angry about something, they might, you know, cry. It's how different people react. So that's why you see sometimes people reacting. People that literally, you know, feel they've never done anything to deserve being pulled over, or and then being harassed on top of it, not just being pulled over. A lot of these people, you know, you can look at this recent case that I'm not even going to go into, because we know a lot of this is more divide and conquer technique. That's why it's so publicized in the way they're publicizing it, where it's Black Lives Matter, and when you get someone that goes, you know, all lives matter, they get booed. Come on. Now, we see those type of organizations out there pushing this race war, and they won. But, you know, that's more reason for us to get out there and be active. Okay, now there's one from We Are Change. And this one's talking about the social economic enslavement of Japan. And China's been bullying Japan around too lately. So, you know, what's going on with Japan? You know, this can also, Japan and the U.S. market tend to be intertwined quite a bit. And we see a lot of similarities with how their stock market acts to ours, but of course that goes globally anymore. And according to this, Luke interviews economist Mark Abella in Tokyo, Japan. Mark has lived in Tokyo for 25 years, gives an amazing interview about the hidden true social economic in Japan, cultural norms to the TPP and U.S. military involvement in the region. Okay, let me cue this up here.
This is Gradowski of WeAreChange.org at the busiest intersection in the world, Tokyo, Japan. And I'm joined by Mark Abella, who's an economist, and he's been living here for 25 years. And in this video, we're going to break down very important, amazing facts that I never heard before. Now, Mark, how do you explain what's happening in Tokyo right now?
Well, you have the population is waking up slowly but surely to the fact that the Japanese government is not working for them. Now, who does the Japanese government work for is a different discussion. And I think they still have to wake up to the fact that the real Darth Vader of the century, of the planet, is unfortunately Washington. Japan was transformed into a colony, an official colony in 1945. I know it's not the polite way to put it, but it became an unofficial colony, a parking lot for the U.S. military. So first of all, the fact that Japan has never been invested in wars since 1945 is ludicrous. they've been spending a huge amount of money over the last 70 years. Now, granted, that money was not spent on Japanese projects. All the money, all the military spending has been kept in order to help fuel and support American activities, whether that be in Iraq and Afghanistan. Japan has always been present. They still remain in the top 5 list of countries that spend a lot of money. Now, over the last year, pretty much, Abe, who's back, wants to spend even greater amount of money on military. What a lot of people fail to understand, unfortunately, is that money will still go for this increasing hegemony that the U.S. is bringing on the planet. And a lot of them are waking up to the fact that something is wrong. I don't think they understand how wrong it is and how little there is at the end of the day for them in that equation.
Yeah. And as we're talking right now, there's major protests happening in Japan against a new U.S. Marine Corps base that's going to be built in Okinawa, that's going to be destroying the coral reef as well. But there's also a lot of fascinating news and information just about the social and economic position here, because as we know, Japan is not doing that great economically at all.
Well, Japan now suffers from 3 precise weight on its shoulders. First of all, it's an extremely robotic, extremely highly taxed country. They have multi-layers of taxation, which really suffocates the population. The country is also indebted in such amounts that the central bank has no choice but to monetize the debt. And what that does is, what they do at the end of the day pretty much is, they inflate the currency in order to buy up all these debt instruments and put them on their balance sheet. The third layer of problems comes from the fact that since Japan is a colony of the U.S., or at least has been transformed into a parking lot to the U.S. military, Japan is locked into buying a lot of American-based debt instruments in amounts that would dwarf, what a lot of other countries have even as a GDP. As a result, that puts a huge amount of pressure on the population. As you can see, all of them are overworked. They work 5, if not 6 days a week. They have very little in the way of holidays in terms of free time. That translates into a society that loses in speed, loses in integrity, and the aggregate of problems is now transforming into a society where people are too tired to build families, to lead healthy lives. Suicidal rate also is, it's been kept in the top 10. They have 30,000 suicides a year. They've beaten 30,000 for the last 14 years. So that's 420,000 suicides in the last 14 years alone. This number alone dwarfs both Hiroshima and Nagasaki combined. So the degree of damage done by taxation and by debts and by the way the U.S. treats Japan dwarfs even the worst bombing in the entire history of humanity. So I think it's time a lot of people stop and pause and reflect on what's happening. I think a lot of think tanks in the U.S. also fail to understand what's really happening. The fact that Japanese people are lied to constantly on TV, that they fail to make sense of what's happening, why the government doesn't seem to be working for them, is one thing. I only wish that a lot of think tanks abroad in the U.S. and Europe will also wake up to the damage currently the Washington Empire, the Darth Vader of Washington, is bringing to a lot of foreign countries. They now have, 800, 900, depending on who does the accounting, probably have somewhere north of 900 military bases around the planet, most of which find their sources in Asia. So as a result, they pretty much control the entire planet, and now they want in on the small empires left around the globe. And I think this recent move of the Japanese government increasing its spending is nothing but a step in that direction of helping the U.S. grab even further and move even deeper into the soul of the planet, its desire to actually have world dominance, world control, worldwide control.
And the effects socially here are just so broad and so huge. I mean, Mark has been doing an amazing job just breaking down just the social conditioning that people are going through here. We just walked through a mall, and Mark just broke down everything that has been happening here with just the way people act, what people wear, just the kind of the exploitation and kind of materialism of just like trying to be outside of not just yourself. And you see those kind of a massive effects. How would you break it down for like the viewer who is not here in person, who is not walking around here with you? How would you break this kind of social conditioning down?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that the problem that Japan faces is not only a Japan-centric problem. Every country on the planet, every single location goes through the same predicaments, and the challenge is it's only shades of gray, if you will, at the end of the day. What's happening in Japan now, you can identify it in France, in New York, and other locations. Now, Japan is deeper into that very problem, and it creates a society where a lot of people, unfortunately, have a very high degree of loneliness. You can feel in people a sense of helplessness. They're waiting for someone to show up and call them. They're waiting for something to happen, and that something never shows up. And I think in terms of labor also, they are so overwhelmed with the amount of labor, the amount of work that they have to face every day, that it leaves very little room for love. And when I say that, I mean it in with the most amount of affection I can have. But when people are too tired, when the government are crushing societies almost to a level where people don't have any more free time, they stop loving themselves, and that translates into a lack of love and empathy and sympathy for the rest of the people around them. And I think you're starting to see that in a lot of cities around the world. I don't want to make it sound as if Tokyo is the only place where it's happening. I see it happening in Paris. A lot of food habits, cigarettes, alcohol. I hope you will forgive a lot of bad habits, a lot of poor caring of self is taking place, and it's very destructive. And I think Japan is just going faster than a lot of other places, and that translates into a society that's not really healthy. And what scares me is I think the less healthy society is, the easier sometimes it is to get societies to do the wrong thing. So in effect, I think we really have to bring as much sanity back to the table as possible very quickly, because if we allow the distortion to go further, we're going to land with an entire planet where people are so upset that the revolutions of 1800, if you listen to what happened, for example, in France, 1780s or 1770s, people were chopping heads with guillotines. I mean, I don't know how much you would need to push me for me to say, yeah, let's just chop that guy's neck and let me see some blood rolling. I would never do it. You would have to push me to an immense extent for me to actually agree to that as a solution. I'm afraid that, unfortunately, if we keep on pushing on population so much, at some point the entire globe is just going to snap, and we're going to see a massive revolt. I just don't know when, but I think we're due for a reset, the Control-Alt-Delete on a lot of societies out there, and Japan is unfortunately deep in that tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, just walking around here, you see kind of the harsh economic conditions forced upon a lot of people here, just being brought out in kind of the social aspect. I mean, Japan has one of the lowest birth rates in the entire world for a reason. People here work themselves to death, and there's actually an official name for that itself. And it's just been just incredible and fascinating just walking around, experiencing it, seeing it, living it, and just talking to locals like yourself who have been going through it for the last 25 years. Is there any other kind of last comments that you want to leave people with kind of understanding Japan in the greater context?
Well, first of all, I would encourage people to travel as much as possible. I think the planet is like a huge book, and every travel you do is like reading a new page of that book. I think that was Gusine who's saying that. And I think it helps put back the puzzle of the planet back into pieces. I think the media also does a really poor job at helping people understand what's really happening. So they will talk about the suicide, they will talk about the birth rate and all these things, but they will always not go that extra mile to explain what's really happening, why this is happening. And I think traveling helps explain that. So I think it's time a lot of people start to put a lot of important discussions back on the table. I think it's important also that we move away from a lot of the state-owned media, because currently the way the media is structured, the interests are not unfortunately in the hand of the consumer. It's not in the hand of the people who actually watch the TV. Most of these.
Okay, I'm going to stop it right there. We are Changed. We are Changed on YouTube. We are Changed.org. Check them out. Subscribe. This is something that we're seeing here in America too, where you do have a large portion of people that are being overworked. They're working 2-3 part-time jobs because they can't find a full-time job. Full-time job people are sometimes working in our second-time job. They don't have time for family. They don't have time. When they do finally get some time, they just want to unleash. Therefore, if they do have a family, they're not really being a part of a family anymore. Kind of more just guardians without the needed compassion, needed time. And that's not everyone, but there is a large portion out there that are like that, and it it breaks down the families, and it really hits at the heart of what makes a fake community and a populace. Um, we just don't see that anymore. And Japan is also facing that, and even to more of an extent. Excuse me. Pull up this article here. I have one from Truth and Media that I want to cover. Just waiting for it to load here. Criminal investigation requested in Hillary Clinton's use of personal email. Two inspector generals are requesting that Justice Department launch a criminal investigation into whether Hillary Clinton abused classified government information during her tenure as Secretary of State. The U.S. Department of Justice has been asked to open a criminal investigation into whether Hillary Clinton abused classified government information during her tenure as Secretary of State, which she used for personal email to conduct government business. The New York Times reported that two inspector general asked for the investigation after a memo from June 29th to Patrick Kennedy, the Undersecretary of State for Management, stated that Clinton's private email account contained hundreds of potentially classified emails. Clinton, who is currently a Democratic presidential candidate, served as Secretary of State from 2009 to 2013. Her use of personal email account on a private server for government business was revealed in March. As Truth and Media previously reported, Clinton insisted that she opted for convenience when choosing to use her personal email, and she has denied that the account contains any classified information. I fully complied with every rule I was governed by, Clinton said. I did not email any classified material to anyone on my email. There is no classified material. The New York Times noted that the Justice Department has not announced whether it will open a criminal investigation into Clinton's actions, and that her campaign is claiming that any released emails deemed classified by the administration have been done so after the fact and not at the time they were transmitted. The State Department is now reviewing 55,000 pages of emails looking for classified information. The New York Times reported that in the 3,000 pages of emails released on June 30th, 24 emails were redacted and labeled as classified after being reviewed by the State Department. In a statement from Representative Trey Gowdy, Republican South Carolina, the chairman of the House Select Committee on Benghazi, he said that the State Department has used every excuse to avoid complying with the fundamental request for documents. Our committee has tried asking personally. Our committee has tried letter requests. Our committee has tried public hearings with other agency employees. Our committee has tried subpoenas, Gowdy said. While the tactics tried have varied, the results have not. Our committee is not in possession of all documents needed to do the work assigned to us. In response, some State Department officials have said they do not have the resources or infrastructure to properly comply with all the requests, while others have said that they believe that many senior officials did not initially take the House Committee seriously, which slowed document production and created appearance of stonewalling. Clinton was criticized in April when, after Gowdy claimed that she had been issued several subpoenas related to releasing her emails to the Benghazi committee, she deleted all emails and wiped her server clean. During an interview with CNN on July 7th, Clinton accused Breonna Keller of making assumptions regarding the subpoenas. "I've never had a subpoena. There's nothing," Clinton said. Gowdy responded by releasing a copy of a subpoena sent to Clinton in March and a statement where he claimed that while the committee has issued several subpoenas, he had not intended to make them public. "I would not make this one public now, but Secretary Clinton falsely claimed the committee did not subpoena her at her choice in order to correct the inaccuracy," Gowdy said. New York Times alter story at Hillary's request. And I'm getting this one from Drudge Report. And it's a story from Politico. New York Times alters Clinton email story. The New York Times made small but significant changes to an exclusive report about a potential criminal investigation in Hillary Clinton's State Department email account late Thursday night, but provided no notification or explanation for the changes. The paper initially reported that 2 inspector generals have asked the Justice Department to open criminal investigation into whether Hillary Rodham Clinton mishandled sensitive government information on private email account she used as Secretary of State. That clause, which cast Clinton as a target of a potential criminal probe, was later changed. The Inspector General now were asking for inquiry into whether sensitive government information was mishandled in connection with the personal email account Hillary Rodham Clinton used as Secretary of State. The Times also changed the headline of the story from "Criminal Inquiry Sought in Hillary Clinton's Use of Email" to "Criminal Inquiry Sought in Clinton Email Account," reflecting a similar recasting of Clinton's possible role. The article's URL was also changed to reflect the new headline. As of early Friday morning, the Times article contained no update, notification, clarification, or correction regarding the changes made to the article. One of the reports of the story, Michael Schmidt, explained early Friday that the Clinton campaign had complained about the story to the Times. "It was a response to complaints we received from the Clinton camp that we thought were reasonable, and we made them," Schmidt said. Nick Morelli, spokesman for Clinton, said in an email that Clinton always followed appropriate practices. Contrary to the initial story, which has already been significantly revised, she followed appropriate practices dealing with classified materials, as has been reported on multiple occasions. Any released emails deemed classified by the administration have been done so after the fact and not at the time they were transmitted, Merrill said. Inspector General request comes after their assessment that Clinton's private email account contained hundreds of potentially classified emails. The Times report notes that it is not clear whether the contents of the emails were marked as classified by the State Department when then Secretary of State Clinton sent or received them. Clinton's use of the private email account at the State Department has been a subject of intense scrutiny by both the media and Republican adversaries for months. No news outlet has been more aggressive in its coverage of that issue than the Times. So there, they had things changed to kind of mess with the wording to kind of devalue. They didn't like Hillary in there. But, you know, she's not going to get the nomination. I'm almost positive of that. But you know, in the scheme of it, we know that a large number, the majority of government does crooked crap. Why? Because they have a monopoly on force, they have a monopoly on power. And we've allowed that to happen through generation. And now we look up and we see that we've lost our freedom. And it's just really sad. Talking about loss of freedom, you know, you find that monopoly on force tends to be the one that sticks up for the crooked banks. You know, you seen where people's mortgages were being sold to multiple banks. You pay one off, and then the other bank contacts you, and then, you know, wants to foreclose on you, and somehow they're foreclosing on you, even though what they don't understand is that mortgage was sold twice. That was part of that housing bubble and all the schemes going on, and it was a mess for a lot of people. We have one here from Adam Kokesh. New York police stole our home. I'll go ahead and cue this up here.
Hey everybody, this is Adam Kokesh, my fiance Mace Tomlin, and we are driving through the Empire State of New York and enjoying one of your wonderful parkways here. And as you might not be able to tell from this shot, there's a problem. Oh yeah, there is a problem. All of our stuff that used to be in our trailer where we live is now in our back seat. As you can see through the rear view window there's no trailer anymore because it was, how shall we put this politely, politically correctly? Stolen by some Manchester County police officers for some paperwork violations. We didn't know that this qualified as a commercial vehicle on the parkway here, so you know, we drive where Google tells us to. And when we were actually, apparently the cop had been following us for a while and was upset that Macy couldn't see him from, you know, around the trailer. And when he pulled up alongside us, told us to pull over, we did. She pulled over on the side of the freeway. He told us to keep going to the next exit. We did. But from having to chase us like that, he was obviously pretty irate. And, you know, we did what you would normally do talking to cops, and that's to, you know, say as little as possible, do only what's legally required of you, and other than that, be peaceful and polite. And yet this dangerous, hardened criminal over here ended up with not one, not two, not three, but four citations for her dastardly deeds this afternoon, this evening. So we're in a really tight spot here. Hopefully, you know, I mean, you know, I just gotta say one more thing about this, the story about how this went down. A couple of the officers on scene of the, I don't know, dozen or so who showed up in 5 or 6 vehicles, including a sergeant and a lieutenant who came out, and
the canine.
And the canine. Actually, it was the first interaction that we had with the officer that because what was it that he said? Because we failed
to answer questions, so he was going to go along and grab a canine because he suspected that we had drugs or weapons in the car.
Now, of course, we are traveling with no contraband whatsoever right now, unless in New York City, pepper spray is illegal.
Well, they actually took our pepper spray.
They took it?
I'm pretty
I saw they put it off to the side,
Oh,
but
I don't know if
did they take it?
I thought he took it. Never mind.
Well, I think we still have one on the visor here that we keep handy just in case, any other slightly less armed thugs, try to violate our safety in our vehicle here. But we're in a really tight spot. We've had some unexpected expenses on the road, and right now I'm scrambling to get our phone bill paid tomorrow. I don't know what all this is going to cost us. Of course, getting a code is going to have a certain expense with just that, and all of the tickets, of course. Although I don't know how many we're going to be able to fight, or if we're going to be able to come back to New York to do this. But that's what we're going to try to do. We're going to come back, and Macy's got a court date, so we're gonna show up probably if we can. If we don't, if there's no way to get out of this remotely, and I think. None of these have dollar amounts on them. This is a summons, basically, for all of these charges to appear in court.
I have to turn in my not guilty plea for the 2 because, I got one for not complying.
Hold on, you're reading while driving.
Oh.
They'll kill you for that in New York, apparently.
What was the other one for? That was
failure to comply with a lawful order. Anyway, so this is what we're dealing with, just another adventure on the road, but we really need your help. I don't have any cash right now. I mean, just enough to keep us going on the road and pay our phone bill.
Get us to the next event.
Get us to the next event. That's how it's been on the road. People have been generous enough to keep the tour going, but it's not like we're making any money doing this, giving books away for free. So we're on our way to Hartford right now, Hartford, Connecticut. We should be there in about an hour if you're watching this as it's uploaded. Maybe you can catch us there. We should be at Artisanal Burgers.
Yeah,
it looks like
Pleasantville Road.
Looks like it'll be about 9 p.m. We'll be getting there. And if anybody, the event was supposed to start at 7:30. So if you're watching this while we're on our way there, sorry we're late. I hope you understand. And if you can help out in any way right now, we'd really appreciate it. It's just if not, it's going to take us probably maybe a few months. But if you can contribute in any way to help get us out of this jam and back on the road with our home, to get our home back.
They almost didn't let us in our trailer. I was like, this is our home, and if we could just get stuff. And he goes, I don't want to answer any questions. Did you hear him say that?
Yeah.
But the lieutenant was nice enough to let us go and get our stuff. Thank God.
And they did have a drug dog, just in case you were wondering. They did bring a drug dog. We have all this on video. We'll be publishing video tomorrow in the next few days. The dog didn't find anything, obviously, but he was barking a lot, though, And I had to explain to Macy what it meant when the cop says, I'm going to go get a drug dog. It means I have no probable cause to search your vehicle, but I'm going to go fabricate some. Watch. And so the dog comes out, and, of course, he's barking the whole time. Of course, they didn't find anything. So we are, if you can help us out, link to donate is below through thefreedomline.com or directly. And this will all be considered a business expense of our non.
Okay, I'm going to stop right there. Adam Kokesh on YouTube. Donate links to freedom.fund. This is a perfect example. When you're traveling around the country, which I've known people that they might be an author, like, Adam Kokesh just wrote a book. He's traveling the country. Well, these people, literally, that's what they've done for 20 plus years. Is they literally, with the camper, travel around the country. There was one that I was reading about a photographer that's basically all they did. Well, because he had freedom on the side of his camper is why they consider commercial vehicle on the parkway. And, it's just an example of ways they get. And, we look at things like your GPS. Well, I have maps that do tell you things that, I don't even know what it is, but for example, the purple triangle, look down at the key, no commercial vehicles without permit, things like that. And technology is kind of slow to catch up to that, but they're sure, storing your data and selling it or giving it to government. But, they're slow on to let you know that, you have a commercial vehicle, you probably shouldn't get on that road. Or, this road is not for commercial vehicles without permits. It's kind of it's a point on, technology companies' focuses, whether it be of their choosing or just complying, and overall government. When you're on the road, that trailer is their home. Whether you agree with Kokesh on everything, which I've read the book Freedom, and it really is a good book. It's just another overreach, and I'm sure having freedom, big letters across your camper, might have irked off that cop. Freedom not around me. I don't know what that was. Okay, I do have one here that was longer, and I wanted to wait until the second hour to play it. We'll cover this afterwards, and we're going to get into a few more news articles before the end of the broadcast. But I wanted to play this. This is from We Are Change, and this is how to fight a judge and win. And this was really, really interesting, and something I definitely wanted to share with you. Let me go ahead and get this queued up here. But this is from Photography is Not a Crime, and Carlos Miller and Grant Stern's recent victory over the judge.
Radowski of WeAreChange.org here in Miami, Florida. And forever we've been hearing about out-of-control judges who interpret the law the way they want to personally, eviscerating the Constitution and destroying the legal judicial system. And people think there's no way of getting any justification, any form of justice when it comes to a judge who's out of control. Well, these guys, Grant and Carlos of Photography is Not a Crime, are proof that that is not true. Now, first of all, these guys have an amazing, incredible story of putting a judge in his rightful place. How did this story begin? Because I know this story is complicated. There's multifaceted to it. How did it start?
Yes, well, I mean, it is very complicated. If you go on photographyisnotacrime.com, you can get all the background. But basically, Michael Hoffman, who is one of our correspondents up in Jacksonville, he went to the Jacksonville International Airport with some signs criticizing the TSA and criticizing the IRS. The whole point of that was we do audits. We test their knowledge of the First Amendment, and we write about it, whether they respect our First Amendment rights or whether they don't. And this is what we do. We've been doing it for a while. And he ended up getting arrested for trespassing. And so we said, okay, that's fine. And we wanted to, as PINAC, we wanted to record the trial. And we wanted to bring a camera into the courtroom, which is legal in Florida. The Florida Supreme Court ruled in 1979 that you can, if you're media, which we are, you can bring cameras into the courtroom. We've done it twice down in Miami. Even on my trial, it's not that big of a deal. Up there, they said, no, you can't. And it went through this whole process where you have to fill out this form, that form, do this, you have to jump to this hoop, you have to do all these things where finally we said, screw it, we filed a lawsuit, and the lawsuit got kicked back to different levels of courts because this was a guy named Chief Judge Mark Mahone, the Fourth Circuit in Florida, so he's the top dog up there, the top judge. He administers 3 counties, and he was calling the shots. He was saying, no, I don't care about the Supreme Court. You guys have to prove your media. You're not media. You're not traditional media. And
even though you guys have better numbers than even all the local media combined when it comes to just your website and the number of hits you guys are getting.
They initially asked to prove that we're media. They said, well, you have to prove that you get 1,000 hits a month, which obviously they were not very understanding of how the internet works. And we told them, well, we get that in an hour easily, if not less. And then they had to turn around and say, well, then you need to certify this and certify that. And
wait a second. That's when they decided to move the goalposts, okay? So they asked us to jump through hoop A. We said, oh, we jumped through hoop A in every state in the country. They said, oh, okay. And they wrote up a whole new order. Here's the new goalposts. And they made it so that basically anybody besides the Florida Times Union or a local TV station would have to pay about... We would take them about 90 days and about $10,000 to $15,000 to pay a court monitor just to report on Duval County Courthouse.
The bottom line, Luke, is this. They told us, if you want your correspondent, which is actually a 70-year-old man named Thomas Covenant, we call him Epic Old Guy.
EOG.
He's a veteran, EOG. He's very harmless. And they said, well, if he wants to record the judicial proceedings, then he has to prove to us that he has covered the judicial proceedings 6 months prior to him asking to cover the judicial proceedings. So basically, they made it impossible.
I mean, how are you supposed to cover judicial proceedings when you need approval to cover judicial approval? And that makes no sense.
Here's the thing. Initially, they said that initially, and we said, yeah, we've done it. Like I said, we've done it over the years. So yeah, we've done it as an organization. Yeah. But then, no, we want the videographer, the guy we want him to prove that he's covered judicial proceedings, and he hasn't.
Well, you know what? This is Jim Crow in action. And these days, they don't care if you're white, black, red, purple, or green. It's Jim Crow. It's the system versus the normal person. Yeah. And that's a grandfather law. They're saying, well, if you haven't done it yet, you're never going to be allowed to do this.
Yeah. So just to break this down, you had one guy who was arrested at the airport with a sign. You guys also did a sting operation with another guy who had the opposite sign saying he loved the TSA, and he wasn't arrested. So when this happened, there's a court proceedings. You guys are trying to film it just to keep everything on the public records, just to make sure that the politicians and the legal judicial systems are held accountable for what they do, and now they're making you jump through all these hoops. What happens next?
Yeah, okay, so while we're battling this, we're filing lawsuits about trying to record in court and all that. So Jeff Gray, honor your oath, he goes out there, and in the same spot where Michael Hoffman was, Michael Hoffman said, screw the TSA or the IRS, whatever he said. Jeff Gray said, freedom of speech. And the cops came up to him, and he asked him, am I trespassing? And they said, no, you're fine. And they walked away. So that tells you that it wasn't the trespassing they were worried about. It was
the content of the message.
Right.
It was all about the content of the message.
If you say freedom of speech, oh, we love you. If you say screw the TSA, well, you know what, we have to go to jail. And then what happened was the Judge Brent Shore, a Duval County judge who is under Mark Mahon, who is the administrator, he ruled that that Mike Hoffman cannot use the First Amendment as a defense, even though it was a clear. Look, it goes down to this. The cop says, you're trespassing. Hoffman says, no, it's the First Amendment. Let's settle it in court.
And he was on public property at the time.
Right. And this is what courts are supposed to be for. Well, we'll settle it in court. And then the court says, well, great, but you can't use the First Amendment defense here. We're going to talk about trespassing. Well, that is not a fair trial. Yeah. That is not a fair trial at all.
Trespassing in a public place at an airport, by the way.
Right.
And he was going to make a public records request. There's no other way to make a public records request without entering public property. And he wasn't disturbing the peace. Well, he wasn't disorderly.
Besides that, they arrested him because they did not know that at the time. They know he was holding up signs, and he didn't tell them that he was doing a public records request, which you don't have to. But that's kind of besides the point. He was holding up signs. It is a First Amendment issue. And then they said, look, no, it's not a First Amendment issue. It's a trespassing issue. We knew we had lost already. We were already prepared for the conviction. But then we're still fighting. We want to record this trial because we knew what they were doing. We knew they're going to screw him over, and we wanted to get it on the record for the appeal, because you can't really depend on the court writer. You can't really depend on that person because we didn't write everything or we got lost. It happens. It really does.
Plus, they charge you exorbitant fees just to even get those transcripts.
Mike's had to pay that for his appeal for the transcript, but we want to at least have the real record, the video, the audio record. And my God, it was so complicated and it's so many different angles you can go into, but that's it. And
so then, on July 1st, when everybody was preparing for the 4th of July holiday, Judge Mark Mahone, who is the chief judge in the Fourth Circuit, issued an edict suspending the Constitution.
Wait, I know. Before that, so what happened? I knew I was going to say something. All right. What happened? So when they told Mike Hoffman that you're not allowed to use the First Amendment as his defense, he goes in front of the courthouse with a sign that criticizing Judge Mark Mahone and Brent Shore. Mahon is the administrator. Shore is the guy who's going to...
his trial judge.
Right. And criticizing them for, violating his right to free speech. And then what happened was Mark Mahon...
July 1st, Mark Mahon issued an illegal order. He legislated from the judicial bench and said that criticism of the bench or accusing the judges of being corrupt in the public sidewalks surrounding the prodigious $360 million taxpayer-financed facility, or taking photographs, both taking the photos and criticizing the judges, was a security threat.
He said it is equivalent to yelling fire in a crowded theater. And that's always an argument they use in the First Amendment because, there's the time, place, and manner restrictions because the First Amendment is not absolute. If you yell fire in a crowded theater and you're actually bullshitting, well, that's not cool.
But your First Amendment rights are strongest when you are petitioning the government and when you are recording for publication, when you are going to publicate or print or write about what is going on. Courts have ruled that consistently. In fact, there was an Occupy Wall Street case in New York where a journalist was protected by the First Amendment, but somebody who said that he wasn't there to write about it was not fully protected by the First Amendment. So he's out there exercising his First Amendment rights strongly. He is petitioning his government for redress, and they said that it is tantamount to attempted murder. I mean, that's what yelling fire falsely in a crowded theater would be. So they did that, and the Washington Post's top legal analyst.
Let me just backtrack a little bit.
Backtrack.
So what happened here is there was a case that the local media was not interested in. It was a misdemeanor trespassing trial, and who would really be interested in that unless it's one of your guys? So we were interested in that. And then while we were fighting the battle to record in the courtroom, Mahon comes up and that you can't photograph this courthouse, you can't video record a courthouse, you cannot hold signs, you cannot criticize judges in the courthouse. You can't criticize him, is basically what he says. He's like, I'm a thin-skinned bitch, is what he said. And you cannot criticize me, and that's it. So I'm going to make it a criminal contempt, So if you actually do that.
Criminal contempt. Yeah. You will go to jail with no trial because the judge has said, I've already tried all of you for criticizing me, and you are all guilty if you do it.
Until you apologize.
Guilty upon
Until
sight.
you apologize. And that's how you get released from jail. We don't want that. We don't want that. We don't want that. But
so hold on. This judge is totally out of control. All right, he's saying anybody who criticizes him will go to jail, violating the constitutional law, violating this other guy's constitutional law for just expressing a sign in a public place, totally throwing him in jail. What did you guys do next?
Okay, so the Washington Post, their top legal blogger, a fully independent blogger who runs a blog of about 20 constitutional lawyers. He's a professor at UCLA. His name is Eugene Volokh, and he writes The Volokh Conspiracy. But that belies the fact that he is a very top lawyer.
There's no lawyer in this country who does not respect him.
No, he is extremely respected. So, he has his own completely editorially independent blog with the Washington Post. So late in the afternoon of the 3rd of July, he came out and published a very dry piece clearly saying, with precedent, that Judge Mark Mahone violated the Constitution, violated the First Amendment with his orders. Well, I happened to be on vacation in Washington, D.C., and I broke from my vacation in D.C. on the 4th of July to write an article because Judge Mark Mahone shit on the United States Constitution on 4th of July weekend. He shit on the Constitution on the 4th of July weekend.
What kind of nerve of that man? Damn, man.
His nerve.
That nerve.
So what did you guys do next? What was the next proceedings to get back at this judge?
So what I just said there, that was the catchphrase. But I wrote an article about how he breached the oath of office.
No, he shit on the Constitution.
And he shit on the Constitution, yes. And he should be removed from office because these oaths, they're a big deal. He should be removed from office because these oaths, they're a big deal. They're part of the Constitution, and the oath that he took to defend and support the Constitution, that is the only thing that keeps this little United States of ours together. Otherwise, everybody can freelance.
And here's the thing. We're used to cops violating the First Amendment because, they don't care. But we should expect judges to, especially a chief judge, to respect the Constitution. That is what cops will always tell you, well, we'll settle in court, and we do, and you have to spend a shitload of money. You have to go through the whole ordeal, and they always win, even though you win. And then when you have the judge saying, screw you, we're not even going to allow you to record. We're not going to allow your guy to use the First Amendment as your defense, and we're not going to allow you to protest or video record outside the courthouse, which costs almost $500 million. And then but then he also said in that order, but if you credential media, which no one really has defined that, credential media to me, and I'll tell you what credential media means. It means that you have an identification. I work for this company. We have them. The Times Union has them. ABC has them. I work for this company. That's it. It doesn't give you any more power. Legally, it doesn't give you anything. It just shows you, okay, I'm a reporter. And so he said, well, the other credential media, they're allowed to do whatever the hell they want, but not you guys, not PINAC. No, fuck you, PINAC, even though we've been writing since 2008 daily. I mean, we're a very national site. And anyway.
Well, what happened next?
So what made this judge step back and say, like, holy cop, I should have never messed with PINAC?
So what happened was the July 4th article went viral, and it called for a call flood. So I'm sure he got a few thousand calls from angry people all over the internet saying that you're wrong, Judge Mark Mahone. You screwed up. You shit on the Constitution.
Well, there was also Pope Hat, who is they call them blogs, BLAWGS, the lawyers writing blogs, and that's how they're called. So Pope Hat is another very well-respected blog, BLAWG, and they came out against this whole order. He was
They pulled out the libertarian wood chipper.
Look, and this judge, Mahan, he is a third-generation Jacksonville native.
Attorney.
Yeah, his grandfather was a prominent attorney. His father was a prominent attorney. So he kind of just got in there through his name.
He was a legislator. He was actually a Florida legislator for over 7 years. And from what we're told, he didn't do much, and they pretty much keep him on the bench like chief lobbyist for the judges. But I digress.
Okay.
I digress.
What did you guys do to put the guy in his place?
Wait. We're working to that. So this is a man who is used to getting what he wants. And look, Jacksonville is like 5 hours away from Miami. North Florida, we're in South Florida. And he probably figured, who are these people from Miami telling me what to do? Well, number one, we are based in Miami. We have people up in Jacksonville, including EOG and Jeff Gray.
Honor your oath.
Honor your oath. And he figured, I'm not going to let these guys dictate what I want to do because my courthouse in my city or whatever the hell he thinks it is, my country or whatever, he thinks he just overreached. He overreached, and then he basically issued the order, and the order just blew up in his face. The Florida Times Union came out, and they were the first ones who reported on it, and this is what really I noticed. They asked, is this right or wrong? And the commenters were all, they didn't really care about us recording the courtroom. They didn't really care about that, but they said, wait, are you saying we can't photograph that courthouse? We can't protest against the judge? The judge is saying we can't criticize the judge.
Yeah.
Look.
So anyway, we got a lawyer. We lawyered up, and Thomas Covenant and Jeff Gray sued in federal court. The case is called Covenant versus Mahone in his official capacity as chief judge of the 4th District in Florida.
Or as we call it, epic old guy against epic asshole judge.
So you guys not only did just a whole media blitz about the situation, not only had people call into his personal office, but you guys also are filing a lawsuit against the judge.
We fought several. And they were getting kicked out. They were getting rejected.
We had been suing this. Listen, we had been suing the circuit for 6 months. But then when we filed in federal court, things got serious. Between the call flood and the filing, he rescinded the first half of his order in 2 days.
Because look, you have to understand.
So he rescinded and said, okay, this order that I made through myself, half of it, saying that no, you cannot protest me in any way, shape, or form. No way you can't criticize me. No way you could hold me accountable in any way, shape, or form. He stepped back on that.
So he said, he goes, okay, now you can protest because, case law really has that established. But the videography part, no, you can't because case law does not have that fully established. Lawyers are really, dependent on that stuff. And so he did backtrack. That's very, very embarrassing for a judge, a chief judge. But
that was just the start because then the Michael Hoffman trial happened, and all of the local media outlets went into the trial and published the following. We covered the trial, we recorded it, and we did not get credentials. And what that did was they effectively wiped out his order because they ignored it. They published it, and there was no repercussions. So any repercussions against us would be selective enforcement.
And here's, and I worked in the mainstream media for a long time before running PNAC, is like, this is not a case they wanted to cover. It really is a misdemeanor. They don't really care about it.
This is the most publicized misdemeanor trial in the history of trespassing.
Right. So they were not interested in this. But then when Mahan started doing all this stuff, and we were still not allowed to record it. But then they came in to record it, and the first thing they said was they tweeted it out. We're in. PNAC is out. We have no credentials. They have no credentials. Yep. What the fuck?
So the judge walked back half of his order, right? Then the trial happened, and then a week afterwards, the judge erased all of the orders. He didn't even tell us about erasing the March order.
We announced the protest.
Right, and we announced the protest too. Yes. So we announced the protest for yesterday, and we've got a great video from the protest.
Well, we announced it like a couple of weeks before. We kind of talked about it. We created a little Facebook page because people were saying, "Hey, we want to protest." It's okay. We create the page. Show up. We'll go up there, and we're gonna, basically what we were gonna do is go up there and shoot our cameras, and we'll take the arrest because we knew it was unconstitutional. I don't give a shit about his order. We will beat that in court, and we'll take the arrest, and that was the plan. And then he basically, right before
he backed out. We were ready to get arrested right there for saying on the courthouse steps virtually, Judge Mark Mahone shit on the Constitution.
Right. But then, so he realized all the nation's eyes are on this, so he backtracked. Basically, he had Jacksonville is actually the largest geographical city in the United States, but it's really, you don't really hear much about it. Like you think of Florida, you think of Miami, you think Atlanta there, New Orleans. So he figured he was going to get away with this, that no one's going to report on it. He's been 3 generations of family, but then he is not accustomed to online media, new media. He's not used to PNAC, and we're just going to expose it. Then the whole country's looking at him. All his legal peers are looking at him.
Yeah. And then we showed up for the demonstration because we weren't really protesting at that point. We had won.
We were celebrating.
We were celebrating. Yes. We were celebrating. So we showed up, and we're standing in the parking lot of the Times Union, assembling all of our gear. And lo and behold, we hear this noise, and there's a biplane flying around with a sign that says, Jax suppresses the First Amendment. We had no idea this thing was going to show up, and it's like flying all over downtown.
Right, and JAX, because Jacksonville's a long word, JAX means Jacksonville. That's like, we would say MIA here. And that's it. So it's like they're flying around, and I had no idea who this guy was, but that showed, man, this is big, that we reach people. Because here it is, it's not really about PNAC, okay, we like PNAC, we don't like PNAC. It's when you tell people you're not allowed to record this courthouse that you paid for, people are going to be pissed off. And that's what happened.
And let me tell you a little bit about that courthouse. That courthouse is budgeted to cost $60 million, and the cost ballooned to $360 million. And it's got an enormous, enormous sidewalk and yard complex out in front where he banned everybody from speaking or photographing or criticizing him or any judge. And
anything else was cool.
Yeah, anything else is cool. I mean, but out there where they just built this huge monstrosity, it is, by God, the ugliest courthouse in all of America.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't criticize it. I mean, it's okay.
No, it's
okay.
Carlos and Grant, that literally just came back from Jacksonville, Florida, from their Tinker Day parade, from flying airplanes over the court system, declaring their victory, making the judge back down and run away. Congratulations on your success. Hold on. These guys, this interview is going to go on forever.
So, yeah, it could go on forever. You asked.
Like determined to break in.
I know.
He's just doing his round.
So Grant comes up there yesterday, and he goes in front of the courthouse and says, Judge Mahone shit on the Constitution. The cops are there. They just didn't say anything. Judge Mahone shit on the Constitution. I was like, what? He shit on the Constitution. And then people were walking up to us like, well,
what
he ain't the only one, you know. And they're very right, actually. And we had a defense attorney who actually walked up, and they saw a sign that one of our guys had Mahan and Shore, and he said, these are actually some of the nicer ones. So that tells you what the hell. That tells you a lot what's going on up in Duval County.
It definitely does, and it's amazing to see a local victory done by just pure persistence, pure will, and pure honesty and truth just coming all the way forward. Carlos and Grant, where can people find out more information about your...
You got me started. I want to say one final thing. This is what it's all about. Look, the First Amendment guarantees freedom of the press for everybody. It doesn't say freedom of the press for CBS or for the Times Union, your local credit. Freedom of the press is guaranteed for everybody as long as you have access to the press, which we do now because of the internet, then you are the press. I mean, you have to do it, on a regular basis to be considered free press, but that's it. So that's the reminder that you can be the media. You can be the media. Our motto is be the media, and you don't have to be part of the corporate media to be the media.
And I'm going to tell you this. Now that we've done this, we're going to get a new shirt. It's going to say, Judge the Judges.
Awesome. Find out about these two great, amazing individuals and their whole organization at Photography is Not a Crime.
Luke Radowski, we are Change. We are Change.org. We are Change on YouTube. And he keeps on rambling on there at the end. But this is a great victory in the sense that they in that area have proven that, with the community understanding, the freedom of speech, freedom of press, and all of that, it doesn't apply to any philosophy other than, the freedom to keep someone accountable for their actions and be able to observe the trial that you're supposed to trust in the justice system that you're supposed to trust in, to only pick criminals away and keep the innocent people free, which we know this is a major failure, and definitely with corruption like this. When you look at this, it proves that it can happen. And it also sets a precedence there that you're not going to get away with it. And I'm sure Pinnack is known in that community now. Pinnack will be a organization someone might get in touch with if the same thing was to happen to them in that community or elsewhere for that, but it's one of those things that it grows a community behind something that people can agree on. You have the right to protest, you have the right to free speech, you have the right to free press. And, if you want to establish yourself as free press, put out a YouTube video once a week. Interview some people. Establish yourself, and you can move on from there. Now, I'm going to get into a few articles here. Now, I see Bernie Sanders moving up, and if you want to see a scary candidate for president, I think he would be one. And I think that he's someone that you seriously need to watch out for. And of course, with politicians, what you hear is not what you see. U.S. Senator, and this from truthandmedia.com, Sanders sponsors $15 per hour minimum wage bill, pays interns $12 per hour. U.S. Senator and 2016 Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders introduced the Pay Workers a Living Wage Act on Wednesday, a bill that would increase federal minimum wage to $15 per hour. However, an ad seeking interns on his Senate office website offers to pay them only $12 per hour. Screenshot seen below, Sanders' ad offering $12 per hour to Senate interns shows that appears directly adjacent to a picture of Sanders speaking at a rally calling for a national $15 an hour minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has not been raised since 2009. Increasing the minimum wage would directly benefit 62 million workers who currently make less than $15 an hour, including over half of African American workers and close to 60% of Latino workers. If minimum wage had kept up the productivity and inflation since 1968, it would be more than $26 an hour today, claimed a press release on the bill by Sanders' Senate office. The press release continued, state and cities are acting on their own. New York's wage board today is expected to approve a new $15 minimum hourly pay for the state's 200,000 fast food workers. D.C. and Kansas City, Missouri are considering raising minimum wage. Los Angeles, Seattle, and San Francisco already passed ordinances raising their minimum wage to $15 an hour. 26 states already enacted minimum wage increases. However, Sanders has yet to act on his own by instructing his Senate office to offer a $15 an hourly wage. The Atlantic notes that senators set their own policy on pay for interns. Sanders said in a statement on the bill that the largest low-wage employer in the country is the federal government, and added, it is unconscionable that workers in the Senate cafeteria, workers like Charles Gladden, who is with us today, make wages so low that they can afford to pay the rent. Now, what we've talked about before is what this really does. It devalues the dollar. And, well, the dollar is already devalued. It's just waiting on this. And this is what could cause a really, really bad inflation. And this would actually pit the minimum wage people in even harder terms. Now, if we have interest rates start going up and we enact a minimum wage hike, what you forget about is the inflation that comes from the minimum wage hike, because you think, oh, well, you get $2 an hour now. Well, guess what? Everyone else's wages are going to go up. People are going to want that same type of increase in their wages. If you went from making, what is it, 7-something an hour to making 15, well, I want that same dollar amount increase hourly. So does the next person. So now for that company to, make a product, it's going to have to come at a higher price. Guess what? That $800 TV that you were hoping to get, now that you're making $15 an hour, that's going to be probably $1,600 TV now. Maybe more. Maybe $2,000. Now you're going, I may make more, but I can't buy what I was hoping I could buy. Look at car prices. You want to understand, what the continual minimum wage hike does. It has nothing to do with that. You want to know why you can't go out there and make a profitable living? Because these large corporations, it's not capitalism, crony capitalism, but not capitalism, corporatism, have lobbied the government to make rules that if they disobey, they can afford to pay a fine, or sometimes it's just swept under the rug until they can't hide it anymore. By then, they've been operating for who knows how long, and money's hidden away. But they make rules that make it where, now it's going to cost you so much money to even get started to be able to compete that you can't afford it. You can't even get a loan to do it. There's where the issue is. We always see, these corporations do this, that's why we need a rule for this. Guess what? They're going to make a rule for it. They're going to make a penalty for it. Company's going to take the penalty. They're going to be knocking on your door because, that new rule, your property's affecting that new rule when you owe them that same amount of money that big, huge corporation, national, multinational sometimes corporation just pay. Or they'll seize your house and property. Who's benefiting from that regulation? We know that government is corrupt. We know this is how government works. So don't rely on calling on more regulation and make a rule about this, make a rule about that. Guess what? That rule is going to backfire in your face. And these big company corporations are going to continue to exist, making millions or billions. And, after this many years of seeing it happen, just in my lifetime, let alone, knowing my history and seeing how it happened with, Rockefeller and, Standard Oil. It amazes me that we haven't had that message spread enough. And the problem is when you do hear people talking about free market and this and that, again, kind of like what Ron Paul said, they don't talk about the monetary policy, for one. Two, they're calling for the free market for these big corporations, and they call that capitalism. And then you have the socialists going, capitalism doesn't work, capitalism doesn't work, capitalism. No, crony capitalism, corporatism. It's not capitalism, because you are basically given roadblocks to make it extremely hard. And of course, some people are able to play the game, maybe have enough money to put down and get a loan. They might know people. They might be able to get that tax break from their dad's buddy. And you have those few that come up. You have the ones that they invent something or quickly bought out by corporations that basically we can do something similar and probably put you out of business, or we can buy yours for this much, and you can watch your invention grow with the name you gave it. And that's what we need to be fighting. Tax hike, I just don't see that happening in a way that would ever work. You know, it's always passed down. Okay, give me a second here. Issue. Okay. Let's reopen the browser here. The browser, something in the Flash player kept playing. Now, what happens when you have all these laws on the books? You're like, they're not going to make any more laws. How many more laws could they make? And the problem is you people that cheer for the laws don't ever think there's going to be a law that's going to create it against them. They don't do anything wrong. Why should I worry about all these laws that don't affect me? And the problem is well, once those criminals are gone after, they have to find more criminals. You can look at the for-profit prisons and learn more about that. So they will. We have one out of Florida, and this was on Infowars.com. Florida man ordered by city to keep barbecue smell from leaving his property. You're allowed to have it smell on your property, so that doesn't count. But when I'm on the street, that's when it counts. A Florida man was confronted by a county environmental specialist this week and absurdly, I can't even speak to you, absurdly ordered to keep the smell of his barbecue from leaving his property. Video of the incident, originally posted on Facebook Wednesday by homeowner Scotty Jordan, shows Pinellas County Environmental Specialist Joe Graham discussing the alleged infraction with Jordan and friends after a nearby neighbor alerted the county. I'm only here because of the odor, Graham says. I'm only here because of the smoke. During the conversation, Graham asserts that the men are in violation of local rule that bans the smell of barbecue from crossing over one's property line. I can smell it again right now, but I'm on your property, Graham tells the group. You're allowed to have it smell on your property, so that doesn't count, but when I'm on the street, that's when it counts. Astonished by the claim, the cameraman asked Graham how the group, or anyone for that matter, would be able to control where odor travels. So we're supposed to control the smoke and the wind and where it's blowing it? He asked. Graham goes on to suggest that the group move their barbecue on a regular basis in conjunction with the wind patterns or purchase a specialized version designed to minimize smoke. A local ordinance similar to countless others across the country falls in line with a long-standing effort from the EPA that aims to limit everything from barbecues to wood stoves under the guise of reducing pollution. And we'll play this short clip here. Barbecue outlaws.
Unreasonably interferes with the comfortable use and enjoyment of property, life or property, or creates a nuisance. Okay? So this is a nuisance.
To this dumbass neighbor over here. But nobody on this street, nobody on this street that's lived here for 40 years has ever complained.
I can't suggest what you should do if you believe your neighbor's harassing you. I think you can figure out yourself, contact somebody about that. I don't know. I'm only here because of the owner. I'm only here because of the smoke.
I'm glad you got some pretty good evidence of affecting neighbors, because you don't see no smoke.
Well, I just took 3 pictures of smoke.
But I got a question, sir. I got a question, sir.
Yeah, what can I do for you?
The people right next door cooked out last weekend to her.
Well, you didn't complain.
She didn't complain.
Well, I don't know.
So we're across the street.
She may be upwind. It may be something else.
That's some horse shit.
See, there you go. I can smell it. I can smell it again right now. But I'm on your property. You're allowed to have smells on your property, so that doesn't count. But when I'm on the street,
oh my goodness.
So you can't smell barbecue smoke on the street.
I can smell barbecue smoke. I'm
so
suggesting right now.
Is that against the law?
The law says. Do you want me to read it again?
And everybody around here cook out. Why nobody?
All I can tell you is if you want to call on your neighbors that you feel like you're being impacted by them, feel free. We will come and address it the exact same way as we do any other person who calls. So that's how it works.
Okay, so everybody can cook out except me. That's what it looks like. That's what it looks like.
Well,
everybody in the whole
I can
world.
only tell you that I am
everybody
sorry
in the whole world can cook out except me. That's what you're telling me. Because everybody else cooks out around here.
We sure ain't gonna
nobody
stop.
Harasses them.
We sure ain't gonna stop.
But I'm cooking out, and I barely have
fire department, ambulance, police, environmentalists.
That don't even you know yourself that don't even sound right. Come on, man.
Sir,
let's be real, man.
All I'm here is to verify that
okay,
there was smoke
the police done been out here. The fire department done been out here. They've been because she's been
many times.
For 3 years. Okay. And every time I barbecue, she send the police and the fire department out here. They tell me to go ahead on.
Okay, well, to be fair, the police and the fire department are looking at different parts of the rule. I know that seems a little odd. Everybody's got their own slice of the rule that they have expertise in.
This company here,
that's saying that right there. If the police and the police department look at different rules.
Talk to this company. They haven't told us that we can't barbecue.
We're not a company, we're a county, but okay.
Okay, well, whatever this is.
Right.
We talk to these people.
That's all right, because we're going to get Mr. Newton to talk about it, man. And Mr. Roussan, we'll get them to talk about it. We're sick of this.
Well, so anyway, I'm just suggesting that there is a rule at play here, and that basically what you're doing looks like it may be in counter to the rule as far as the objection.
So I'm breaking the rule.
So
I'm suggesting that
what's the end result?
I'm simply suggesting that it appears from my observations off your site here that you have smoke leaving. That's prohibited. And you
what's the consequences?
Okay, so what is a barbecue?
That is not for me to decide. I can only write it up and send it into our department.
What is a barbecue grill for if you can't smoke?
Right. Why do they sell it? Why do they sell it at Publix?
You are within your property line.
I have a tent over my grill. I'm in my backyard.
So we're supposed to control the smoke and the wind where it's blowing.
One of your concerns at a time. Okay. So
this stuff is funny, man. That's why I'm recording it, bro.
Your property. You do what you want as long as it doesn't go over.
Did you see smoke over there?
I saw smoke leaving your property.
Did you see it over there?
Chris, don't even argue with it. Chris, don't argue with it.
Affecting neighbors. It has to be
going
right
there.
They're not calling you. She's calling you. Well, she's way across the street.
Once you leave a property
and
line,
you didn't see any smoke over there.
Once you leave the property line, you're not allowed to do that. According to the rule states.
Chris, don't sweat it, dog. It's horseshit. We can't get stressed out about it, dog.
All right, well.
It doesn't make sense. You're gonna buy a barbecue grill and you can't smoke it. What does it do?
They're gonna sell wood.
Inside my house?
They sell wood at Publix.
They sell the wood in public. So you're telling me I'm breaking laws?
It's only how you are able to do it in your property.
Oh my goodness!
I'm trying to be more.
So you see, they don't care about anything but enforcing these laws that they know people can't control. You barbecue and you can't let the smell leave your property. I could smell it, but I'm on your property, so that's okay. But on the street, that's another thing. Really? Um, these are just more BS. I would like to see more cities end up like Detroit when they start enforcing these laws. People leave, let it crumble, let them have their taxes on no population. Let them rule their ruins. And then I want to see the cities that realize what that does and make their city and their counties and their states a freer society. Less restrictions, definitely on the small businesses. But no, we tend to get more restrictions that only affect small companies, or you personally at home instead of the corporations that they were supposedly to stop from doing bad things. Yeah, right. When you see that the heads of these departments tend to work or come from these mega corporations, do you expect them to enforce something that'll hurt their friends or their potential next employment? That's kind of the back rubbing that goes on in politics in Washington. You help me out here while you're in that department, and when you get out, there's a job waiting for you. And we go, yep, it's capitalist. No. Those aren't capitalists. Those are corporatists. They use government as a tool. And then you go clamoring to government to make rules. And they're like, okay, you want some rules? Yeah. $10,000 fine if you do this. Why the multinational half of the time, some just more national. Corporations are going $10,000. Why the little business owner is like $10,000? Well, that restricts me on what I can do, and if I accidentally mess that up, I get charged $10,000. That would hurt me. That hurt me a lot. I have to scramble because now I can't make as much money, and I can't afford to pay that $10,000 fine and pay my employees. Man, I've only been open for a couple of years, and they're hitting me with this. Corporations, $10,000. $10,000, really? I'm sure most of them have watches that are worth $10,000. Okay, give me a quick second here. I want to kind of touch on the 2016 elections. Told you about Free and Equal and the festival, United We Stand Festival. Again, go check that out. We talked a little bit about Bernie and Clinton, but have you noticed we haven't heard too much about Rand Paul? But heard a lot about your Donald Trump. And he's been all over. No, Ron Paul. Have you noticed we're seeing the extremes of everybody coming out. No Ron Paul. Then you got Nader warning that the GOP that Trump running third party, which would probably give us a Bernie Sanders. No Rand Paul. And if I said Ron Paul, I meant Rand Paul. We have Ted Cruz a little bit in the headlines, accusing McConnell of lying. And don't see much about Rand Paul. And this was from the AP. In stunning attack, Cruz accused leader McConnell of lying. In a stunning public attack on his own party leader, Republican Senator Ted Cruz accused Majority Leader Mitch McConnell of lying and said he was no better than his Democratic predecessor and couldn't be trusted. Cruz, a Texan who is running for president but ranks low in early pollings, delivered the broadside in a speech on the Senate floor Friday. Extraordinary departure from the norms of Senate behavior that demand courtesy and respect. Not only what he told every Republican senator, but what he told the press over and over again was a simple lie, Cruz said. At issue were assurances Cruz claimed McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, had given that there was no deal to allow a vote to renew the Federal Export-Import Bank, a little-known federal agency that has become a rallying cry for conservatives. Cruz rose to deliver his remarks moments after McConnell had lined up a vote on the Export-Import Bank for the coming days. It saddens me to say this. I sat in my office. I told my staff the majority leader looked me in the eye and looked 54 Republicans in the eye. I cannot believe he would tell a flat-out lie, Cruz said. We now know that when the majority leader looks us in the eyes and makes a explicit commitment that he is willing to say things that he knows are false. And it goes on to show how, well, a politician lied. Well, we know this about many politicians. Now, we know Ted Cruz is a big supporter of aid to Israel, which I'm not opposed to Israel, but I'm not for Israel. I'm not, for or against any country. I'm for good people and against bad people. And what I mean bad people that are willing to abridge other people's rights, whether it be groups or individuals. And I think that abridges the peace. And I think it goes against natural law, and I think it goes against people's rights. And I think my money that's stolen from me should make its way back to me. And I think we as individuals, we as communities, and we as people that have humanity start taking care of ourselves for one, and then what we have to offer to help take care of others. And that on a voluntary basis. You shouldn't be forced into helping people you believe are making wrong choices. And you don't think that helping them in any certain way is going to be beneficial, that they need some other type of help. Or you want to be greedy, you can be greedy, but then when you need help, I don't think too many people that's take care. Have a great week and stay tuned here. Bye.